So this game with the 72 Knicks is interesting for a couple of reasons. It's personally interesting for me because this is a team that I was going against in the NBA 2K16 association that I often bring up, where I had a lot of classic teams running in there. And the thing is, you hear a lot about the 72 Knicks and how good they were and the team basketball they played, but it simply doesn't carry over to 2K, at least on the computer's part, because that was a team that I beat relatively easily every time we played. But now that we're a few games into this series and I've played with multiple legend teams, I can actually tell you this is one of the best classic teams you can use, and it makes me sad because they are super duper slept on, as in I've never ran into them one time. I think the reason nobody uses the 72 Knicks is because they don't have your traditional ISO players. So if you play online, one thing you'll notice is people run for the 2012 Thunder because they have 3 ISO guys that you can tear anybody up with in Westbrook, Harden, and Kevin Durant. But with this Knicks team, if you're going to spend all game trying to go one-on-one with Walt Frazier or whoever else is on the squad, it's not going to work because they're not one-on-one players. However, what they are is excellent team players, and their skill sets fit together perfectly. So by now, one thing I've mentioned a million times is that these classic rosters are usually really thin because either the players that they have on the bench aren't good or they're just filled with generic players. However, neither of those problems exist with the Knicks because their starting 5 is excellent and so is their bench. So the 2 big names that you have come off the bench is Earl Monroe and Willis Reed, and those 2 are significant because they could easily be put into the starting lineup. Looking back at it, I might have put Earl Monroe in the starting lineup with Walt because they play really well together, and I really didn't get anything out of the shooting guard that I was starting. As a matter of fact, I don't even know his name, but his production off the bench was very welcomed. However, there's a very specific reason I'm not starting Willis Reed at the power forward position. So if you've been a fan of me for a while and you were back to the 3 Kings of New York days, you remember I had Willis Reed on the Knicks, and I actually stopped posting before I got to show you guys a lot of that gameplay, but I had him running the starting power forward there even though he's a center, and it's because his jump shot is really good. He's really a knockdown shooter from mid-range. However, the starting power forward that the Knicks have can actually shoot 3-pointers, and Jerry Lucas, who's the starting center for that team, he's also good at mid-range as well. So that's really good to have 2 shooting big men that stretch the floor because Willis can't shoot threes, but your starting power forward can, so that's why I'm having Willis come off the bench. This is also really good for situational purposes because there are times where you would prefer Willis's defense over the guy that they have starting, and I'm not using his name because honestly I don't know how to pronounce it. Using this Knicks team, I was pretty skeptical because they're the polar opposite of teams that you have today. They don't have any good ISO players on the roster, and they don't shoot a lot of 3-pointers because they only have like 1 or 2 knockdown shooters from that range. I tried a couple of threes with Walt Frazier, and what you find out really quickly is that he's best for mid-range. You're not going to get a lot out of him from the 3-point line. So to counteract the fact that this team is so much different from modern squads, you're going to be wanting to do a few things. First of all, I'm not sure how many of you run plays when you get online, but for this Knicks squad, I don't know what you're going to do off the dribble, so you're going to need to run plays. And as I often preach, you're really going to need a post game too. And it definitely benefits you to have a post game here because those are some of your best players. Willis Reed has a strong back to the basket game, and so does Jerry Lucas. With Willis Reed specifically, one thing that works really good is to run the pick and pop with him. So when you set up your pick and roll, make sure you switch it to fade. Whoever's guarding Walt Frazier, because that's mostly who you're going to be doing this with, just make sure you run his defender straight into the pick, and most of the time Willis Reed is going to be wide open because I don't know if I mentioned earlier, but on top of the mid-range, Walt Frazier actually is a really good finisher at the rim, so you'll probably run into a lot of situations where both defenders are following him to the rim and Willis Reed is going to be open at the top of the key. I'm pretty sure there's an example of that in this video, and you're going to be left with a wide open jump shot. So whenever he comes in off the bench or you decide to bring him off the bench, he's a really useful weapon. I mentioned Earl Monroe before, and that's another good piece because he's another guy who can handle the ball, because sometimes you have backup guards coming off the bench that they're just not really so good with running the offense or just handling the ball in general and holding on to it. Some of them get it stolen pretty easily, and I imagine that whenever I get around to using this team again, I won't start him, but I'm going to give him way more minutes. So I believe in like the 4th quarter, I don't remember if I had him actually in the game, but definitely whenever I play again, I'm going to have him and Walt Frazier finishing the game because that's a good tag team. So just to explain what you're actually seeing at the end of this video, what happened is I trapped this guy because I'm down by 2 points. It was only 10 seconds left. I did not want to foul him, and I figured he ran into a corner, and I figured I could trap him and make him give up the ball, and what he ended up doing was calling a timeout when he didn't have any. Now he messaged me and said he still had 4 timeouts and that it was a glitch, and you know it could have been because 2K does have some crazy glitches. Now I have no way to check, it's not on the footage, so I'm not sure how many timeouts he really did have, but because of that it was a technical and I got to shoot a free throw. And that brought me to within 1, going. So to go for the win, I just ran a simple pick and roll to put his defense in rotation, and he left 2 people open actually. The last person left open was Jerry Lucas, wide open for the mid-range. He has an easy release and he was super close to the rim. It was lightly contested, but to be honest, if you slow down the footage, you can clearly see that by the time he even jumped, I was already at the top point of my release, so it was a good shot. Despite all of that, I wasn't that hyped for this win because it doesn't count. I'm not sure how many of you noticed, but this is actually the same user from my last video with the 71 Lakers and the Denver Nuggets, and what actually ended up happening was after that game he wanted a rematch because he felt like he should have made those 2 shots with Carmelo Anthony, and you know, I don't blame him. I think those should have went in. So I gave him a rematch, and that's what I did for the 72 Knicks. He picked the 71 Bucks, we played on a Hall of Fame, and I got him again. Whether he had timeouts or not, we'll never know because I have no way of checking. In any case, it doesn't really matter that much because his defense simply broke down at the end, so what can you do? Anyways, if you enjoyed the video, hit the like button, comment, and sub. Hit the bell next to my name if you want notifications on future videos, and I'll see you guys with the next team. Thanks for watching.